Well, I guess Rita's in self-destruct mode. Back-to-back repairs is where we're at now. Oh, I gotta get that drip underneath fixed. The little return line that I stabbed with a stick. And it looks like now we've got the hydraulic supply line running up to the front end loader. Just dry rotted and cracked. I was running up on the burn pile just to kind of push it out, and I heard a psh, and my first thought was, holy crap, I just ran over a hot coal and burned a hole in my tire. And then I looked down and saw the mist spraying out instead. So it doesn't make it any better that I have to fix it, but it's easy enough. It's just replacing hydraulic hose. I've already traced on the ends. Anyway, just the way it goes. Rita's worked hard, now she's wore out, so she's throwing fits, and I'm having to fix a bunch of stuff. Aggravating, but it's easy. So I'm just laid up under Rita here, finally fixing this oil line that was leaking. I poked it with a stick, and best I can see, it's just a return line back to the transmission. See, this is the hydraulic oil filter here. There's this hard line, comes off the top, runs right back to here, and then it just makes this little bend just to go back into the base of the transmission. And it was sitting there sipping and dripping and seeping, so I poked it with a stick, but I noticed it was definitely not a factory connection, because it was a piece of hose that was too big, that was a piece of straight hose, I'll show it to you here in a second, that was kinked on there just to make it work. I pulled it off, obviously, since it's dripping, and went to town. I measured out an inch, so I went to town and I asked them at O'Reilly's just for a 90-degree, 1-inch rubber hose. I said, just a piece of radiator hose would be fine. But I want it pre-bent in a 90. I don't want to make it become a 90 with a straight piece of hose. So they gave me a U-shaped hose. He said he didn't have a 90, but he gave me a U-shape. Said I could cut it in half, which I guess, hey, now I've got a spare. So here's what they gave me. This sucker was $11, which sucks, but actually it's going to work out just right. I'm going to cut it right in half. So I will have a spare. Hopefully I don't need it, but I'll have a spare. Here's the old one that was on here. You can see, like I said, it's way too big. This thing's like 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches. And the hole in it, here's the hole. It got worse as I was taking it off. I was prying and pulling and tugging, trying to get the thing off there. So the hole got a little worse. It wasn't that bad. But that's the old junker. Did have some nice clamps on it. The prior owner put that on there. Actually, some really decent clamps that I like, so I gotta get those on my new hose. But I'm gonna take this one here and just cut her in half and get the clamps on and get it slapped on there and hopefully get this oil put back in the tractor. Alright, so that's on. And it was not easy. That was a total pain in the butt. It was just so close together. Several times I debated taking that flange off just to have a little more room to work, but I managed to finagle it in there. It's a good thing I had the U-shaped hose and had a spare, because I ended up having to use the spare. The first one was too big, and then I thought I'd trim it up a little bit to make it smaller, and then of course it was too small, and luckily the second piece that I had saved as a spare was just the right size. I didn't have to trim it at all. So had to get the longer portion, this lower portion here, that's the longer portion. Had to get it on first, and then was able to pull this hose over just a little bit, enough to give myself a little room, and was able to slip that other end in there. I could not slip it on with the clamps on. They were just too snug of a fit. So I had to disassemble the clamps and then slide them up onto this slick part of the metal hose, or slide them up there to start with, then disassemble them, take the screw out of them so I could open them up a little wider, slip them onto the hose and put them back together, which was also a huge pain in the butt. I think at first I said I liked those hose clamps, but I think now I would have rather just had plain old basic hose clamps that can open up all the way. The, I don't know what you call them, spiral clamps or gear clamp or whatever, but just a stainless hose clamp. I would have liked that. Anyway, it's on there now. I gotta go get a funnel and try to get some oil put back in this thing, and hopefully it doesn't leak. Okay, so there's our second culprit on the day. You can see here where it's wet, right there. Yep, that's it. But that's just the main feed pressure that goes to the front end loader control. So you see there's just a port right there, and that is a son of a gun to get to. That elbow lays right on top of that part of the brace for the front end loader, to where you can't hardly get a wrench in there to it. There's another elbow, another swivel right above it. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll just break off that swivel there because it's easier to get a wrench on, but you actually can't get it off because as it starts to back down, it pins against the frame. But it is still handy to have that upper swivel, because I broke the upper swivel to let that hose rotate out, and then it was a little easier to thread it off there. Now that hose winds up and through the frame there and then ducks down. It ducks down right against the firewall. And it runs around underneath the tractor. And it comes back up on the other side here. And ties in right to the back of the control block. So at least that much was easy to get to. Interesting. I've never looked that close at this thing. I don't know what that extra port's for. Because these go back to the... I don't know where those go. Return lines, maybe? Anyway, these are the 4 lines that go up on the boom in the bucket. I don't know what all the other lines are, but... Oh, duh. These are the control lines, because they wrap around and come right up to here. Duh! Which is also interesting. How do you have only 2 lines that run to a 4-way lever? Oh, those aren't lines, those are cables. Those aren't hydraulic hoses, those are cables. Alright, doesn't matter. So we got the second hose off. Go check in with the wifey and see what her plans are for tonight. And see if I can run to town and get this hose fixed, or what we gotta do. Alright, so just got the other new hose put on. Again, this was the main supply line. Brings hydraulic pressure to the front end loader. It just wraps around underneath the tractor there. I don't really like the way it's run because it actually hangs just below the drive shaft shield, which means in theory a stick could pull up and snag it. But it's a pretty thick walled hose, pretty rigid hose. Here it hooks up here just on the other end, right into the back of the hydraulic pump, that lower hose there. It's got the double swivel. And again, I mentioned before, I had to break both swivels. Obviously I have to break the one here at the bottom to take the hose off, but then there's a swivel right there on the other end of the 90 that lets you turn that 90 out so you can actually get that hose on to start it. Otherwise you can't get a wrench in there to turn it. So anyway, it's on there now. Oopsie. It's on there now. Rerun in the same manner. I tried to rerun it a little differently, but it just wasn't quite long enough. I would have had to stretch it really, really tight. And I didn't want it stretched tight and then pinned against anything that might be like an abrasive corner or something to wear another hole in it. So it's on there. I've started the tractor already once and tested. Nothing leaks. I guess this is just a longer nipple on this thread over here. Because you see I threaded on. There's quite a few threads still exposed, which had me nervous, but nothing's leaking, so I guess it's fine. But anyway, little Rita here is fixed again for now. Oh, I was going to mention getting you the right size wrench. This is a 15/16, which kind of tickles me. I was talking to my mechanic the other day and I said something about, oh man, I feel like this daggum nut's a 15/16. It was on something else. I said, what a stupid size. He said, yeah, it's actually an extremely common size, 15/16 for a lot of things on equipment. I don't know why. I guess that's just what matches up on a, that's a 1/2 inch hose, I think. Anyway, So I had to buy one of those wrenches. I had this little one here, a little service wrench. Of course, it's only got a little, 6-inch handle, so you can't get a lot of torque on that one. But luckily I had that one. That was enough to break the old hose off between that and just smacking it with a hammer to bust the torque. But those little wrenches are handy for, it's what they're designed for. Service wrenches are designed to get into tight spaces and take things off where a full-length wrench would be a pain in the butt. But it was ridiculous because my standard wrench set only goes up to 7/8, which is just annoying. It's like I got a whole standard set of combination wrenches, but I've got up to 7/8, and then I had mega wrenches starting at like 1.25 inches or 1.125 inches. I had the big wrenches for the excavator, so I actually didn't have 15/16 or 1 inch. So I went ahead and bought both just to have them in my arsenal. Now that I bought them, I'll probably never use them again for another 2 years. I hope I don't have to use them, right? Stuff's not breaking. But I got them, so they're in there with the rest now. Okay, Reed is running. Back to work.